Hello there. I'm Danielle Ralston. I am the founder and head coach here at ND Out Loud. What is ND Out Loud? ND Out Loud is a team of neurodivergent coaches. We are neurodivergent, every single one of us. TBIs, PTSD, ADHD, autism, ADHD, and so much more. Bipolar disorder, all of the things. We also have a passion for supporting others like us, so you don't have to struggle like we did in our past. We have all taken trainings and certifications and all of that so that we can support you in living a better life and upgrading all of the things that are frustrating about your life. What is this session going to give you? This session is going to give you actionable tips. So yes, we're going to talk about our programs and all of the things that we offer, but I want you to walk away with something actionable for something that is overwhelming, frustrating, or just plain annoying you right now in your life. Or if you're a parent or a spouse of someone with neurodivergence, to help them as well. I want you to walk away with something today. So please sign up today for a free call. We can learn more about each other. Hello, hello. You're going to notice a different background and a different name. We are operating on our consulting side, specifically under ND Visionary Partners. Why ND Visionary Partners? Well, one, we're part of the ND Out Loud brand, but we are visionary partners, every single one of us that is here in this consulting side, partnering together to make sure that we bring change to what's going on in the online and workplace space right now. We all know that everything is topsy-turvy, to put it very mildly, right now. And we are bringing change. So we thought a new name at the same time just made sense with everything else. So you're going to start seeing some new things from ND Visionary Partners, which is a specific section of us here at ND Out Loud. Same people, we're all here. So we are talking about merit today. We are hearing this in the news a ton. We are not getting into politics right now. Not going there. That is not the point. But we do want to make sure that people with invisible disabilities, which is our specialty, neurodivergence, which is one of our specialties, are getting the support they need. And one of our big things is talking about merit. So what is merit? Merit is mindfulness, equity, which we're going to explain what equity is here, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions of what equity is. So mindfulness, equity, respect, inclusion, and transformation, which we're changing from. You've heard the terms DEI, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been hijacked. So let's bring it back to our purpose and what our purpose is. And that's changing the workplace for those with individual disabilities to contribute to society.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is our basics.
Yeah, and what many times when we have similar conversations like this, we really do everything we can to bring the data into those conversations. So this is not Danielle's feelings and the emotional attachment that we have to this. It's not mine either. It's pure data. The data is telling us a specific story, and we are acting in accordance to that data. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I may sound a little bit like a broken record when I talk about this, but I don't think it's talked about enough. And no matter how long I live, I'm going to be talking about this. So we know that we're living in a current economy in which the baby boomers are retiring by the millions every year. Over the last 3 or 4 decades, birth rates have been lower than what would sustain the economy according to the open jobs that are available in today's economy. One may argue that life, generally speaking, in the United States, but also in Australia, the European Union, and all across the board, has been so expensive that adults, when they become of age in which they start having children, they're having them less because they're scared to have children in today's economy. We're in a place in which our parents, Danielle and I, are parents, which, we just happen to have the same parents because we're siblings, but our dad was able to sustain the family on one salary. And that just doesn't happen in today's economy anymore.
Absolutely can't happen in today's economy. And like Tim said, so many people are starting to retire. And not even just retire. Unfortunately, the previous generation is dying off. It's not Many of the boomers aren't even retiring. They're dying in their jobs. And unfortunately, we've seen a few things where they actually physically died on the job over this last year, which is horrifying to me, that somebody in their 70s, 60s, 70s is dying at their desk. Because of the economy. I mean, the economy is a big part of that. But the other thing that we want to bring up is DEI. Traditional DEI has not been working. We know it hasn't been working, which is why DL Out has been doing what it's been doing for the last few years, because DEI just wasn't working. Why wasn't it working? Because companies just weren't willing to bring in new training programs because their older workforce was still here. They didn't have to make changes. And I think that's a big reason why DEI hasn't been as impactful as anyone had hoped over the last 5-10 years. I don't necessarily think it's a failing of what the DEI training programs offered. We're, again, not getting into the politics of it. I really do think it's because of our economy that the older generation that have been in those jobs for 30, 40, 50. I talked to somebody the other day who has somebody who's been at their company for 47 years. There's no reason to change policies or do anything when you have the same person in the same position for 47 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but that's in part because most employers have not created proactive practices and knowing that eventually that 47-year employee is going to leave. It's inevitable. Like that's something that they can't prevent from happening. So they're not being proactive in building skill sets. I remember one particular employer that actually was quite great in how they went about sustaining their talent. They were kind of in a fork in the road, basically, in which they had this was a manufacturing company in Connecticut, and they had a tool and die maker, which is a very, very specific skill set that had been with this employer. I think at that point it was 40 plus years, and every time the employee wanted to retire and express that desire to retire, they would give that employee another $5 an hour pay raise just to stay, because they didn't have anybody else that had the skill set that was necessary to replace them. So they're like, maybe we need to do something about this, because the 40-year employee is eventually going to have to leave. So let's see what we can do about replacing the skill set. So they work over the next several years to do that. And the interesting thing was that they'd come to a place in which individuals with disabilities and women were the primary workforce eventually, because they really focused on getting those skill sets built up, merit-based skill sets built up with these demographics of the population. And now they are booming as a result. So that's just one small example of like what some employers that are pretty good and using what it was previously called DEI in a proactive way, in which they are now a thriving employer that is growing. So that's just sort of the mindset that we're trying to help change in terms of really changing the terminology, first of all. So we're not going to call it DEI anymore, but we're really going to place an emphasis on merit-based hiring, merit-based retention, and the language aspect of it is really, really important. One thing I want to put out here, and this is something that should go viral in what I'm about to say, but hey, maybe it will. If every unemployed individual in the United States were to suddenly re-enter the workforce, there would still be open jobs in the United States that cannot be filled. If every disabled person just happened to be employed today, there would still be open jobs in the United States. If every underemployed person working part-time at a Home Depot or something along those lines were to suddenly start working full-time, there would still be open jobs in the United States. So the idea, and there's some rhetoric, and again, we don't want to go into politics at all. That's a very dangerous place to be right now. But the rhetoric that individuals with disabilities is a detriment to today's workforce is just simply wrong, first of all. And second of all, we need them. We need them in this workforce. And you as an employer or you as a program need to work to integrate individuals with disabilities in your workforce. Merit-based hiring.
Okay, so let's go back to merit-based hiring. Merit-based hiring. So individuals with work disabilities. I'm going to say something that is going to horrify some people. There are certain disabilities that don't match up to certain positions. If you are in a wheelchair, you can't work a job where you have to walk up and down stairs all day. I'm sorry. There is no level of accommodations that makes that doable for a company. So if you are a disabled person looking for a job, don't take what we're about to say and say, well, I could do any job I want to do. No, that's not what we're saying. Merit-based means, do you have the skills? It's not based on color. It's not based on your disability or lack thereof of disability, the color of your skin, your economic background. Do you not have nose rings or purple hair? Because I know that's a lot of the rhetoric that's out there right now. It has nothing to do with that. What we are looking to see is merit-based hiring. What are your skills? What are your ability to grow your skills? And how are you going to fit into this position? Is every position right for every single person? No. Because I'm sorry, Tim is just not going to be a great surrogate mother. He's not going to. That's not going to work. And as a matter of fact, neither am I. I'm way past my prime on that stuff. So not every position is for every person. That is not what this means. That's never what DEI meant either. So we do need to state that. So merit-based hiring. We really want to see a merit-driven workplace where empowering businesses with data-driven decisions and inclusion and equity. So what is equity? There is equity and there is equality. Equality is everybody gets the same thing. So I'm going to explain, this is the best explanation I've heard, is if we buy a size 5 women's pair of shoes, equality is everybody gets a size 5 women's pair of shoes to wear. Okay. That's not going to work for everybody. That's not going to work for me. That is equality. That's not what equity. Equity is giving everybody the chance and the ability to gain the skills or gain the support needed. And supports are things like transcription services, having an elevator in a building, having lights. Having lights is an equity thing, believe it or not. Having electricity so that the battery on your laptop doesn't die. That is equity. That is a piece of equity. Equity is not, I don't know where people went wrong with equity. Equity is providing the right tool for the right job. And sometimes the right tool for somebody who is deaf is having closed captioning. The right tool for somebody who needs glasses is to get them a pair of glasses, to get them the right size shoes, get them the right lighting, get them a pair of headphones, whatever. That is equity.
Well, so I actually have a personal story that I can interject into this. Circa 2006, 2007, I applied for a position with Starbucks in the town that I was living in Connecticut. And I went through the whole interview process. They offered me a position, but then they're like, you're hard of hearing. So let's just see if, operating the drive-through microphone would be something that you're able to do. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And we did a test, and it kind of worked for me, kind of didn't work for me because I'm deaf. So it was something that I knew was going to be a struggle. And at that point, I actually removed myself from contention for that job because I felt like I was not qualified for that role. And it was not a discrimination that I was putting on myself. I just felt that I wasn't well equipped to take on that role. So we mutually parted ways. I signed some forms just in that realm. Now today, I could probably work at Starbucks in the drive-thru if I wanted to, because the technology is there that allows me to do it.
That's equity. Is the right tool for the job. And somebody who is ADHD, let's pick ADHD specifically, who needs noise canceling headphones in order to concentrate and write code at their desk or write SOPs at their desk. That is equity.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's not some mystical word that means everybody has to have the same thing. No.
Absolutely not. So, and then going back to the data piece of it, we're in a place now in which more than ever, you need to start considering this workforce if you want to sustain the growth that you have in your company.
So I think where the first piece of this is starting with the data on your current employees. Let's start with data on your current employees. That's one of the things we do when we come in with a wide survey is we look at the data on your current employees. In our findings and in Dr. Jessica's findings with this wide survey, 73% of your employees have invisible disabilities. 73% of people in the workforce have invisible disabilities in companies.
Yep.
So if you have 500 employees, 73% of them already have disabilities you may or may not know about. Why does that matter to a company? Why should it matter to a company?
Well, when it comes down to if employees that are currently working for your company feel more heard and feel more understood in regard to the daily struggles, and as a result, now you're implementing policies within your company that is helping them be more successful in their role. Now you have more productive employees. And then now you have the culture that's necessary for when you hire new employees, you're in a place in which they are able to thrive immediately.
So let's take a step back a little bit. Some things that Tim brought up, they feel safe, they feel heard, they don't feel judged. I know that this is a problem, and people are like, well, why doesn't matter in my workplace? I don't care about people's feelings. Yeah, well, if you look at the data, and Lightcast came out with a new study today, and I haven't even read the whole entire thing. Gen Zers, which we need in the workforce badly, and we're not even talking about those with invisible disabilities. 87% of them have invisible disabilities. 87%. So even removing that piece of it and just looking at them as a generation, they're not willing to work in a workforce that doesn't see them as human beings.
Yep.
They just aren't willing. And
Yep.
I don't blame them.
And a lot of them are going in entrepreneurship, or a lot of them are deliberately underemploying themselves because they don't want to participate in the workforce as it stands now.
Yeah, we can't blame them. So it's not just an emotional based, safe, seen, heard thing that we've been hearing for years. It is if you want a quality workforce who changes your output, who gives you growth, who gives you productivity, which gives you more money as a business owner, you have to be looking at the data of who you already have, what they feel of what the workforce is providing them, and change how you are providing resources and support in your workforce. End of story.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it's so needed because, like I'm the data person on this team. And like one of the things that we would look at when we talk to you as an employer is we would look at the data not only from a national standpoint, but then we would look into a state, and then we look down into a county, and then your specific zip code, and look at it from a very granular view, and then all the way out to the 30,000-foot view, to really give you a full idea of what your workforce is going to look like in terms of the talent pool that you're able to tap into over the next 10 or 15 years. And it really paints the picture in which this is the approach that you need to have when you're hiring these days. And I have to say that, like, given like what we're seeing on the national scale, and again, we don't want to delve into politics at all, we are definitely in a time of change, whether we like it or not.
Absolutely. But some of these changes are needed. And one of the changes that really has to happen is data-driven insights. So data-driven insights are going to remove barriers to productivity. So we're going to look at the data you already have, compare it to country, city, state, county, even, and then help you remove the barriers to productivity, help you increase your engagement, help you increase your retention of employees, because that is a big problem. Every time you have to replace employee, it costs you, I can't remember I meant to look up the stat. It's a huge amount of money. It's like 97% of somebody's wage or something like that to replace an employee and have to train the new one. And you have months of downtime because no matter who you bring in, even if they are the perfect person for the position, it's still at least a 90 to 120 day onboarding process for every employee.
Yep.
So you're losing money every time you have to hire somebody new or replace somebody because somebody left because they didn't like your managers. And people rarely leave jobs. They leave managers.
Yep. So, going back to this, it's like we're now looking at this from a equality standpoint. We're looking at this from an equity standpoint. We're looking at this from a merit standpoint. So we're not encouraging companies to hire unqualified employees for an important role.
No. If you need a tool and die maker who has 40 years of skills, you want to know what? You might want to hire that tool and die maker's son or daughter, because believe it or not, they have 40 years of knowledge that they've been taking from their dad, who's been doing it for 60 years. And that's something that we used to see post World War II, is fathers and sons and daughters following their parents into the same exact, not even the same company, the same exact jobs, because there is a knowledge transfer, and that is merit-based. That is skill-based. That's a bunch of skill-based knowledge. And I actually have a story for this. And it was in manufacturing. My husband worked in a tool and die company for 16 years, 18 years, something like that. And dad retired. His son came right up behind him as a journeyman, never went to college, just learned on the job. And this die came up that had to be fixed for GM. And dad was dead and gone by this point. And this kid remembered the story that dad told at the dinner table. And I say kid, he was 40 something at this point. This guy remembered something that dad said at the dinner table when he was like 16, 17, about building that exact die, and knew how to fix it.
Yep.
But companies don't have that anymore, because companies have ditched retention, have ditched treating employees well and not treating them as slaves. And any company that says we treat you like family, that's slave culture. And that's not political. That's fact. Anybody that has worked in a company that says we treat you like family and run as fast as you can. Companies have gotten rid of that. Gen Zers won't put up with that. And I want to tell you, the neurodivergent crowd absolutely will not put up with that, because our sense of justice is epic scales, we've been told. I've actually been told that repeatedly this week, because I'm on pettiness revenge for justice for some things that are going on. You have to look at the data of who you have, what skills you have, what skills do you need, can you train internally, because it's merit-based.
Yeah, now is the time to really start building that foundation. I've observed that probably for especially the last 15 years, but probably more like the last 30, 35 years, the economy and companies are basically in survival mode, where they're just looking to put Band-Aids on a particular problem and just be able to roll it over to the next subset of the workforce to take over that problem. So therefore, they have not created proactive policies when it comes to hiring and retention of their employees. And now we're in a place in which it's gotten worse, because now we have baby boomers that are retiring by the millions. We have lower birth rates over the last several decades. We have reshoring of manufacturing from China. Chinese manufacturing has been going downhill. Mexico and Canada and the US has taken up the brunt of that. So manufacturing has been growing. But amid all that, they have not created hiring practices. Basically, what they're doing is they're posting a role. The manufacturer across the street has an employee that is tempted by the $2 an hour pay raise. They hire that employee from the manufacturer from across the street, but then that manufacturer then hiring that employee back to go back and forth, and they're just playing volleyball back and forth with the workforce. And so now we're in a place in which employers now more than ever need to create the proactive procedures and policies in place, using merit-based hiring as the concept for that.
And the other part of this is we're looking at, with the changes in the economy, with the changes that are happening nationally for us, we're looking at manufacturing coming back into the United States, which means these companies may not be new companies, but they're reestablishing in the US, and they need to reestablish with these new ways of hiring and retaining employees. And your employment pool of trying to employ people is very small.
Very small.
So if you aren't competitive in retention and offering better solutions for merit-based hiring and skills and growth, one of the big things in that new Lightcast thing that I saw, and again, just got it, was that people wanted room for growth in their positions, and companies haven't been offering that for a long time.
Yeah.
They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to become more integrated into the company, and companies stopped offering that. That is part of employee retention. That's a huge part.
Yeah. And companies really need to have a, like the mindset that if they build a skill set for a certain employee and that employee leaves your company for another employer to use that skill set, it's still a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's a win for the economy, but employers are still so set on like, well, they only want to invest a certain dollar amount to that employee because they don't want to lose them. And I've seen a lot of employers that really have that mindset of building skill set and helping their community grow and thrive as a result of, yes, that employee leaves you and goes to that better job, but that's not a bad thing. So that part of it. But then the other thing that is sort of the elephant way over in the corner of the room that we don't really want to talk about, but it's very much a big part of this conversation, is immigration and immigration reform. And that has now dwindled the workforce even a little bit further. And
more than a little bit. Yeah. So, I mean, employee retention, employee growth, hiring from a wider net of people, hiring people with invisible disabilities, being willing to train and accommodate them, that is not creating less money for you to earn on that employee. None of those things do. In fact, especially if you're looking for somebody with a neurodivergent label, you're looking at a better employee by like.
Yeah, you absolutely are. So what are the benefits of merit-based hiring? Let's adopt the website that we've just developed that we're going to be sharing as much as we can. You have increased productivity. You have higher employer engagement. You have better retention rates. You have stronger innovation and problem solving. So that's one of the things we've talked about in previous conversations, is that sometimes when you hire that person with a disability, they bring different perspectives and learned experiences to that conversation. And as a result, companies are able to innovate further to be able to serve and maybe tap into a new customer base as a result. And then legal compliance and benefits. So
and that's going to actually, I think that's going to be a very big thing. We right now, multiple members of our team, we're doing a lot of training on new legal compliance things for ADA and all of that. So if you don't have that internally, that's why we're here. We're here to make this process of hiring merit-based employees easier. And by data, again, not based on feelings, not based on political views, not based on any of that. It's based on data that actually already exists, because there's a ton of it out there. If you have questions, if you're looking to change the message, get ahead of what's going on so that you get your best pick of what is existing for employees out there, reach out to us. We're here to help. We're here to help you create the data that you need to grow. We're going to give you this data. We're going to create data for you, and you're going to be able to use it going forward for years to come. Let us know how we can help. Please reach out, DM, email, all of those things. Danielle at ND Out Loud, info at ndvisionarypartners.com. We are here to help. Have an amazing day, and I'd look forward to more of these conversations.